Okay. Okay. Mm. Okay. 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 Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Uh, Sorry to interrupt your chats and dinner. Welcome to Herman's Jazz Club. We're going to begin now. My name is Dan Russek. I teach in the Department of Hispanic and Italian Studies, soon to be amalgamated in the School of Languages, Linguistics, and Cultures at UVic. First of all, good evening. Welcome to Herman's, and thanks to all of you for coming to this night of sonnets. I want to thank Herman's Jazz Club for hosting us. I'm sure many of you have been here many times, and I'm really glad that they're open the doors, not only for music, but also for these kind of events. I want to thank you, of course, for being here. Without you, we would not be organizing these events. And I want to thank the readers. We have more than 15 readers. So it has been great interacting with them. I've been learning a lot about sonnets by chatting with them and hearing their proposals, etc. Before I continue, is there a photographer here? Someone could take a picture of me. Thank you. Okay. Well, no, sorry. Oh, you can see I'm not a singer. I want to thank our sponsors, the Faculty of Humanities, the Department of English, French and Francophone Studies, and Hispanic and Italian Studies at UVic. So let me tell you how we're going to proceed. Each one of you should have a piece of paper with a QR code. That QR code will allow you to access the list of readers and sonnets. If you want to follow the text, the poems that will be read, you can do so. And if you don't want to, you don't have to. You can take the text home as a souvenir for tonight. Yeah. So we have around 20 sonnets. I gave some imprecise instructions to the readers, like don't read too slow, not too fast, make an impact, etc., etc. But they will do whatever they want. Yeah, what to expect here? We're proceeding chronologically from older to more recent. We're beginning with a text that's not a sonnet, but I decided to include a poem by Horace, thanks to my colleague Greg Roll from Greek and Roman Studies. I couldn't say no to him, but it makes sense because without Latin we would not have English, Spanish, French, and Italian. The rest are sonnets, and even though they're organized just chronologically, there's some interesting links between some sonnets by poets that have nothing to do with each other. That's what I learned. So I asked the English readers, those who read sonnets in English, they might want to read the sonnet twice, because as we know, reading is rereading. In the case of sonnets that are not in English, so we have the original sonnet and then an English version. So those are not necessarily vetted, might not be the most perfect sonnet, but just for you to have a sense of what has been read. Also, that's an incentive. If you like a sonnet in Spanish, you might want to learn Spanish to understand what happened. And what else? We might have a brief intermission, maybe 45 minutes into the reading. And I think that's almost all. It's customary to begin these events with the territorial acknowledgement, and I decided to do something a bit different, which is write a sonnet about the territorial acknowledgement. And of course, I do that with due respect and humility. And I hope I'm capturing something that the declaration says. It's not a transcription word by word. It's, let's say, my interpretation. It's my way of making the declaration my own. So you can find it, that's page 2. I'll read it in Spanish, and then I'll read the English version. After that, we're going to proceed with my colleague Greg Rowe, and each reader will just call the next reader. Okay, so this is the soneto en ocasión de la declaración territorial. A sonnet on the occasion of the territorial acknowledgement. En sus antiguas tierras habitamos, mientras en sus reservas languidecen, alto al abuso histórico merecen las primeras naciones que aquí honramos. En sus playas y bosques caminamos, donde el salmón y el águila amanecen, quedan aún las voces que florecen de viejas poblaciones que asolamos. Contra el colonialismo, la empatía entre la humanidad al fin domine. La reconciliación tenga su día y la benevolencia ojalá anime el camino futuro. Que esta tierra reparta a todos los frutos que encierra. Okay. Thank you. Here's the English version. Again, this is not a sonnet as such. It's just a literal transcription or translation. English version. In their ancient lands we inhabit, while they languish in their reserves, an end to historical abuse deserve the First Nations that we here honor. On their beaches and in their forests we tread, where the salmon and the eagle awake. There still remain voices that flourish of old populations we tried to devastate. Against colonialism, may empathy among humanity finally rule. May reconciliation have its day. Hopefully benevolence will show the future way. May the land deliver to all the fruits it bears. Great, thank you. So it's an honor for me to invite to the stage Dr. Gregory Rowe. And and each reader will say something about himself. They'll introduce themselves. Okay.
Can I borrow your paper text?
Absolutely.
I'll give it right back.
Sure. Here we go. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. So we're in the year 28 BC. Octavian has defeated Antony and Cleopatra, and he's dedicating the Temple of Apollo on the Palatine, the most fabulous temple maybe yet constructed in the Mediterranean. And he asks Horace to sing the poem in dedication. The poem is, we have built this temple for you, now what do we ask of you? And Horace takes this opportunity to deliver a sort of sermon of Epicurean values. He talks about all of the luxuries that he doesn't want, known, and then he talks about his very simple needs, for olives and chicory. Anyway, as Dan said, this is not actually a sonnet. I thought I'd fooled him, but apparently not. But it will show you sort of the very different way that in Greek and Latin poetry is structured. That is to say, around rhythm and the length of syllables rather than around rhyme. Everyone can hear me all right? Yeah, good, okay. So this is Odes 131 by Horace. Quid dedicatum poscit polinem vates, quid ora de patera novum fundens liquorem, non opimae Sardiniae segetes veracis, non aestuosae grata Calabriae arment, non aut eburindicum, non rura quae liris quaeta mordet aquata citurnis amnis, preme calenam falce quibus dedit, fortuna vitem, dives ut aureis mercatorex sicet culilis, vinesera reperata merce, dis carus ipsis, qui peteret quater, anno revisens aequo Atlanticum impune, me pascunt olivae, me cicorea levesque malvae. Frui paratis et valido mihi, latoe dones et precor integra cum mente, nec turpem senectam degere necitera carentem. Yeah, it sounds pretty good. Here's what it meant. What is the poet's request to Apollo? What does he pray for as he pours out the wine from the bowl? Not for the rich harvests of fertile Sardinia, of sunlit Calabria, not for India's gold or its ivory, nor fields our silent lyricist stream carries away in the calm of its flow. Let those that fortune allows prune the vines with the Calenian knife, so rich merchants can drink their wine from a golden cup, wine they've purchased with Syrian goods, who, dear to the gods, 3 or 4 times yearly revisit the briny Atlantic, unscathed. I browse on olives and chicory and simple mallow. Apollo, the son of Latona, let me enjoy what I have, and healthy in body and mind, as I ask, live in old age not without honor, and one not lacking the art of the lyre. And now it's my very great pleasure to pass the torch to Lloyd Howard, whom I haven't seen in years. So this is the main event, real sonnets from Dante.
Thanks, Greg. Nice to see you. The sonnet was about 50 years old when Dante wrote the one that I'm about to read. The first sonnet was written by a member of the School of Sicilian Poets at the court of the Emperor Frederick II. As far as we can tell, the originator of the sonnet form was Giacomo da Lentini, or Il Notaio. He was a notary. The sonnet I'm going to read is the last one in Dante's Vita Nuova, the New Life. And the New Life tells the story of his love for his courtly lady, Beatrice, which starts as an adulterous love, but over time, after her death, he looks heavenward where she is, and beyond her, ultimately to God. And that's what this sonnet is about. It basically, in 14 lines, if you don't have the time to read the Divine Comedy, just read this sonnet. It's all there. It's all there. Okay, but instead of Dante the pilgrim journeying in the flesh through hell, purgatory, and paradise, in the 1290s, Dante writes about a sigh that comes from within himself, that journeys beyond the widest sphere. The widest sphere is the prima mobile. Remember, this is pre-Copernicus, so we're talking about the Ptolemaic system, the prima mobile, which moved the sun and the other stars around the earth every 24 hours. But beyond the prima mobile, there is the Empyrean, where Beatrice resides, gazing upon God. Okay, so starting with the Italian. Oltre la spera che più larga gira, passa il sospiro che esce del mio cuore, intelligenza nova che l'amore piangendo mette in lui, pur su lo tira. Quand'egli è giunto là dove desira, vede una donna che riceve onore, e luce sì che per lo suo splendore lo peregrino spirito la mira. Vede la tal che quando il mi ridice, io non lo intendo, sì parla sottile, al cor dolente che lo fa parlare. So io che parla di quella gentile, però che spesso ricorda Beatrice, sì ch'io lo intendo ben, donne mie care. Okay, and now in English. Beyond the sphere that circles widest, passes the sigh that issues from my heart. A new understanding which love, lamenting, imparts to him, draws him ever upwards. When he arrives where he desires to be, he sees a lady who receives honor and who shines for her splendor, so that the pilgrim spirit contemplates her. He sees her such that when he repeats this to me, I do not understand, so subtly does he speak, to my sorrowing heart that makes him speak. I know he speaks of that noble one, for he often mentions Beatrice, so that I understand him well, my dear ladies. Thank you. Can you introduce Alisa?
Yeah, I forgot. Okay. I have a few more QR codes if anyone is missing. Yeah, and I have 4 brochures with the printed poems. If someone is just completely opposed to QR codes. One. Someone else? Yes. First come, first serve. Alisa? Are you coming? My apologies, I decided not to print too many because of the damages to our forests and global warming.
Okay, my apologies for coming a little bit late. Are you ready? Okay, so my name is Alisa. I just finished my degree in Hispanic Studies, and today I'm gonna read Desolatore by Francisco de Quevedo, a Spanish Baroque poet. Retirado en la paz de estos desiertos, con pocos pero doctos libros juntos. Vivo en conversación con los difuntos y escucho con mis ojos a los muertos. Si no siempre entendidos, siempre abiertos, o enmiendan o fecundan mis asuntos. Y en músicos callados contrapuntos, al sueño de la vida hablan despiertos. Las grandes almas que la muerte ausenta, de injurias de los años vengadora. Libra, oh gran don Josef, docta la imprenta. En fuga irrevocable huye la hora, pero aquella el mejor cálculo cuenta que en la lección y estudios nos mejora. I'm now going to read the English version, the English translation of this poem. Withdrawn to the solitary place with a few but learned books, I like conversing with the dead, listening to them with my eyes. open always and not always understood. They meant they enrich my affairs. In rhythms of contrapuntal silence, I wakened, they speak to the dream of life. Oh, Don Joseph, oh, Don Joseph, for those great souls. Absconded by death, the learned press avenges time's slanders. In irrevocable flight, the hour flees, but it can be counted fortunate when we better ourselves by reading. Thank you so much. Gracias. I get to be sideways. Yeah, this is good. Okay.
Okay.
Beautiful. Yeah. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Slightly higher. I don't know how this thing works. Aquí.
Yeah.
Sí. Muy bien, gracias. Hi everyone, I'm Navarra. I recognize a few of you. I was a student with the History and Spanish departments, and then I TA'd with the Spanish department for a while, and now I work with the Humanities Computing and Media Center. So I've made my way around and I've met many of you in different capacities. Tonight I'm going to read you a sonnet by Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz. She was a Mexican nun. She lived in the 17th century. And honestly, with Sor Juana, you could, print off a list of her poetry, put it on a wall, throw a dart, and then be quite happy with whatever you land on to read it. But I've chosen one that I think is nice. I like how it sounds. I like what it says. I think it's quite an interesting one. I'm going to hopefully get away with reading two English translations to you because they're both quite different. They're both fair translations, but the feel of them is quite different from each other, quite distinct, which is always fun when you're reading translations of poems, of course. But first in Spanish. Detente, sombra de mi bien esquivo, imagen del hechizo que más quiero, bella ilusión por quien alegre muero, dulce ficción por quien penoso vivo. Si el imán de tus gracias atractivo sirve mi pecho de berinte acero, ¿para qué me enamoras lisonjero? Si has de burlarme luego fugitivo. Mas blasonar no puede satisfecho de que triunfa de mi tu tiranía, que aunque dejas burlaro el lazo estrecho, que tu forma fantástica ceñía, poco importa burlar brazos y pecho, si te labra prisión mi fantasía. So the first English version is a translation by Samuel Beckett, who was in his own right a poet, a very good poet. And then the second one will be a translation by Karl Cobb. But the first one, tarry, shadow of my scornful treasure, image of my dearest sortilege, fair illusion for which I gladly die, sweet unreality for which I painfully live. To the compelling magnet of thy grace, since my breast as docile steel is drawn, why dost thou, with soft ways, enamour me, if from me then in mockery thou must fly? And yet thou mayst noise in triumph boast, that over me thy tyranny has prevailed. For though thou breakest, mocking, the narrow coil that girdled thy fantastic form about, what boots it to make mock of arms and breast, if thou art prisoner of my fantasy? And then a slightly more modern English take on it by Karl Cobb. Stay, shadow of my love so tentative, the image of bewitchment I swear by, illusion fair for which I joyful die, sweet fiction for which I so troubled live. If to the magnet of your graces, sensitive, my breast as steel serves, happy to comply,
Then why do you such flattering charm apply, if you must trick me later, fugitive? But you cannot go boasting, satisfied, that triumphs over me your tyranny. For though you outwitted, leave the bond that's tied around your form fantastic, totally. It matters little breast, arms to deride, if prison weaves for you my fantasy. So I think as Dan said, perhaps if you like one of those, you might want to learn Spanish now and find what it was originally, the sense of it. But hopefully you enjoyed.
Thank you, Navarra. We need more students like you, for sure. And I forgot to thank someone who's taking photographs, Cathy DeCoste from the Office of the Dean of Humanities, who help us promote the event, and she's taking photographs now. Thank you. Who's the next reader? Sylvia. Okay.
Well, I'm dressed as Sylvia.
Sylvia. This is not Sylvia.
Well, yeah, Sylvia couldn't make it tonight, so she asked me, since I focus on 19th century, and this is À une passante by Baudelaire, Charles Baudelaire. And of course, it follows well on the poem we just heard, because it's about love at first sight, but a fleeting love at first sight. So, you know, I think everyone's experienced this. You make eye contact with someone, and then they disappear, and it's like forever an image in your mind. So this poem was first written in 1855. And it appears in the second edition of Fleurs du Mal in 1861, that notorious collection of poems, which I like to think of as an epic of modernity precisely because it's fragmentary, whereas an epic poem would be monological and unified around a major narrative movement. So we have multiply fragmented lives of Paris during the Industrial Revolution. Baudelaire is perhaps the first poet to take the lyric out of the country and bring it into the city. All the poems in the collection correspond to each other. Each one helps to understand all the others, like an infinite crystal. So we have different view of Baudelaire's ideal of beauty, destructive as it is enticing, fleeting as it is eternal. We think of its destructive beauty in the storm of the passerby's eyes and in the eternal of what might have been. So I'll read the French first. La rue assourdissante autour de moi hurlait, longue, mince, en grand deuil, douleur majestueuse. Une faim me passa d'une main fastueuse, soulevant, balançant le feston et l'ourlet. Agile et noble, avec sa jambe de statue, moi, je buvais, crispé comme un extravagant. Dans son œil, ciel livide où germe l'ouragan, la douceur qui fascine et le plaisir qui tue. Un éclair, puis la nuit. Fugitive beauté, dont le regard m'a fait soudainement renaître. Ne te verrai-je plus que dans l'éternité? Ailleurs, bien loin d'ici, trop tard, jamais peut-être, car j'ignore où je fuis. Tu ne sais où je vais, ô toi que j'eusse aimé, ô toi qui le savais. So, To a Passerby by William Aguilar, translator. The street about me roared with a deafening sound. Tall, slender, in heavy mourning, majestic grief, a woman passed with a glittering hand, raising, swinging the hem and the flounces of her skirt. Agile and graceful, her leg was like a statue's. Tense as in a delirium, I drank from her eyes, pale sky where tempests germinate, the sweetness that enthralls and the pleasure that kills. A lightning flash, then night, fleeting beauty, by whose glance I was suddenly reborn. Will I see you no more before eternity? Elsewhere, far, far from here, too late, never perhaps, for I know not where you fled, you not where I go. O you whom I would have loved, O you who knew it.
Hello, my name is Campbell. I will be reading Lord Alfred Tennyson's If I Were Loved as I Desire to Be. Lord Alfred Tennyson was the poet laureate of the British Empire in the 19th century and attempted to evoke the Gothic revival through his poetry and create a globe-spanning British identity. So hopefully this poem reflects that, and it is also a love poem, so this is the night for them, apparently. If I were loved as I desire to be, what is there in the great sphere of the earth and range of evil between death and birth that I should fear, if I were loved by thee? All the inner, all the outer world of pain, clear love would pierce and cleave if thou wert mine, as I have heard that somewhere in the main fresh water springs come up through bitter brine. 'Twere joy, not fear, clasped hand in hand with thee, to wait for death, mute, careless of all ills, apart upon a mountain, though the surge of some new deluge from 1,000 hills flung leagues of roaring foam into the gorge below us, as far on as eye could see. Thank you.
Oh, it's really helpful that when you're up here, you can't see anything beyond the lights. That's just terrific. I'm reading a poem by Gerard Manley Hopkins. Hopkins is another Victorian poet, albeit just a tiny bit later than Tennyson. He also, rather notoriously, when he was about 22, he was at Oxford, and having been raised in a very high Anglican family, he then had a religious conversion and he became a Catholic. And over the next 3 years, while exploring his faith, he also decided that he wanted to be ordained and eventually became a Jesuit. And this poem is one of his most famous poems, and it's reportedly written right before his ordination, which helps to explain why it has this weirdness, which is that it's a sonnet with an epigram. That's a bit of a strange thing. So this is the windhover. And one thing I should say is that the windhover is a name for the common kestrel, which is a kind of bird of prey, falcon, small bird, that if you look up on your phones when you're not pointing it at QR codes to read poems, the windhover, when it's hunting, actually can ride the wind. So it looks like it's actually just hovering completely still. And it's in windy conditions able to stay still while looking down at its prey. And it seems like what's happened is that Hopkins, in seeing a windhover, has this sense of what it must look like to see the Holy Spirit, or to see Christ, or to see something divine that moves him a lot. I caught this morning's minion, kingdom of daylight's dauphin, dapple dawn-drawn falcon in his riding of the rolling level underneath him, steady air and striding. Hi there. How he rung upon the rein of a wimpling wing in his ecstasy, then off forth on swing as a skate's heel sweeps smooth on a bow bend. The hurl and gliding rebuffed the big wind. My heart in hiding stirred for a bird, the achieve of, the mastery of the thing. Brute beauty and valor and act, O air pride plume, here buckle. And the fire that breaks from thee then, a billion times told lovelier, more dangerous, Oh, my chevalier, no wonder of it. Sheer plod makes plow down Sicilian shine, and blue bleak embers, ah, my dear, fall, gall themselves, and gash gold vermilion.
Hi, my name's Kyla, and I'm gonna be reading a poem by Juana de Ibarbourou. I'm just gonna read it. Also, some background. Caronte, or Karen, is the Greek, mythological person who would take you to the underworld when you die. So that might be important for you. Okay. Caronte, yo seré un escándalo en tu barca, mientras las otras sombras recen, giman o lloren, y bajo tus miradas de siniestro patriarca, las tímidas y tristes en bajo acento oren. Yo iré como una alondra cantando por el río, y llevaré a tu barca mi perfume salvaje, e irradiaré en las ondas del arroyo sombrío, como una azul linterna que alumbrará en el viaje. Por más que tú no quieras, por más guiños siniestros que me hagan tus dos ojos, en el terror maestros, Caronte, yo en tu barca seré como un escándalo. Extenuada de sombra, de valor y de frío, cuando quieras dejarme a la orilla del río, me bajarán tus brazos cual conquista de vándalo. And then the English version. It's called Rebel. I guess that's important. Karen, I'll be a scandal in your bark. Those other souls may pray, lament, or cry beneath your evil patriarchal eye, while timid spirits murmur in the dark. Not I. I'll be the lark that flits and sings. I'll flaunt my savage musk, and I will beam my bright blue lantern on the bleak black stream, sailing above the crossing on my wings. You may not like it, and although you glare at me with baleful eyes, I just don't care. Karen, in your bark, I'll be a scandal. Then, when I'm cold and weak and fight no more, your arms will drop me on the other shore, vanquished like the captive of a vandal. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Emil. This is Emil.
All right. One more. So this is the famous sonnet en X, or sonnet in X. Just imagine how hard it is to rhyme with X in any language. But it evokes the problem of rhyme. So this is his most famous sonnet, I think, perhaps even his most famous poem. And it took him decades to write. There's the first version, which is called Sonnet allégorique de lui-même, sonnet allegorical of itself. So it's a sonnet about a sonnet. Or this specific sonnet, it's a sonnet about itself. So it's about the mere play of language with empty words like the tics, merely there for the sake of rhyme. Like an empty room, the North Star, the septuor, that is both the constellation and the group of 7 players in a musical piece, but also half the number of lines in a sonnet, 14 lines, right? But it's an impossible number 7 because it's 6 and 8. So all of this is figured in the poem. The reader possesses the key to my poetry, he says. It's a very democratic view of poetry, I'd say. So I disagree with the idea that this poem is hermetic, that it hides a mystery or is even elitist. It's a poem about pure possibility, outside the meanings of the poet, of any meanings the poet might have had. Here, Mallarmé relinquishes authority and lets language speak, allows beauty to display itself as it unfolds. Mallarmé's verse is to poetry as abstract art is to painting. Where the latter is painterly, Mallarmé's is a poetry of poetry. You have to pay attention to the sound, to the resounding sounds, to the sonnet qui sonne, qui assonne. So I'm going to reverse the order and read the English first because I want you to pay attention to the sound, because no one gets the poem anyway. Or they get it in a million ways. So, her pure nails on high displaying their onyx, the lamp-bearer anguish at midnight sustains, those vesperal dreams that are burnt by the phoenix, and which no funeral amphora contains on the credenzas in the empty room. No ptyx, abolished shell whose resonance remains, for the master has gone to draw tears from the sticks with this sole object that nothingness contains. But in the vacant north, adjacent to the window panes, a dying shaft of gold illumines as it wanes, a nyx sheathed in sparks that a unicorn kicks, though she, in the oblivion that the mirror frames, lies nude and defunct. There reigns the scintillations of the 1 and 6. Oops. Okay, here we go. Ces purs ongles très hauts dédiant leur onyx, l'angoisse ce minuit soutient lampadophore, main rêve vespéral brûlé par le phénix que ne recueille pas de cinéraire en fort sur les crédences au salon vide. Nul ptyx, aboli bibelot d'inanité sonore, car le maître est allé puiser des pleurs au Styx avec ce seul objet dans le néant sonore. Mes proches la croisée au nord vacante un or, agonise selon peut-être le décor, des licornes ruant du feu contre une nyx. Elle, défunte nue en le miroir encore que, dans l'oubli fermé par le cadre se fixe, de scintillation sitôt le septuor. Next we have Matteo Serrano.
Hi, so I'm going to be reading a poem by the Nicaraguan poet from the 19th century, Rubén Darío. Something I find really interesting about his poetry is how imaginative it is, how dreamlike, and how much it gives to one's imagination. Okay, so, sorry. I have it right here. Or if anybody has like one of those sheets of paper with the poems, that would be really great. Thanks. Yo persigo una forma que no encuentra mi estilo. Botón de pensamiento que busca ser la rosa. Se anuncia con un beso que en mis labios posa. El abrazo imposible de la Venus de Milo. Adornan verdes palmas el blanco peristilo. Los astros me han predicho la visión de la diosa. Y en mi alma se reposa la luz como reposa el ave de la luna sobre un lago tranquilo. Y no hallo sino la palabra que huye, la iniciación melódica que de la flauta fluye, y la barca del sueño que en el espacio boga. Y bajo la ventana de mi bella dormiente, el sollozo continuo del chorro de la fuente, y el cuello del gran cisne blanco que me interroga. And now the English version, I seek a form. I seek a form my style cannot quite trace, a bud of thought that seeks to be a rose. A kiss upon my lips proclaims the throes of the Venus de Milo's impossible embrace. Green palms adorn the white peristyle like lace. The stars have shown me a goddess in repose. And in my soul, a stow light lingers, glows, like the bird of the moon on a lake's calm face. And I find nothing but the word as it goes, the flute's initial note as it flows, the bark of dreams that glides through infinity. And under my sleeping beauty's windowsill, the fountain yet that keeps on sobbing still, the neck of the great white swan that questions me. And after we will have Dr. Carmen Rodriguez de Franz. Yeah, just.
Thank you, Mateo. Thanks, all readers. The program says there's a brief intermission, and I suggest taking 5-10 minutes just for the poems to sink in. Very powerful texts. Anyway, I hope you're enjoying the night. Let's pause for 5-10 minutes and continue with the second half. Thank you. Okay. I think the break is over. I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt your chats. So let's continue with the second half, and we have now two readers who are going to read three sonnets. So I want to call to the stage Carmen Rodriguez, Dr. Carmen Rodriguez de France, and Alex Brooks.
We're going to read a poem called Sonetos de la Muerte by Gabriela Mistral. Gabriela Mistral was a Chilean poet who wrote this sonnet in 1914. That's when it was published. She lived from the late 1800s until 1927. If you went to school in the 1900s, you probably could not have missed learning about Gabriela Mistral and her poetry. So we hope you enjoy these Sonetos de la Muerte, Sonnets of Death. And it seems like death has been a theme in the sonnet read tonight. So we're going to take turns. Hopefully this also evokes different feelings. Del nicho helado en que los hombres te pusieron, te bajaré a la tierra humilde y soleada. Que he de dormirme en ella los hombres no supieron, y que hemos de soñar sobre la misma almohada. Te acostaré en la tierra soleada con una dulcedumbre de madre para el hijo dormir. Y la tierra ha de hacerse suavidades de cuna al recibir tu cuerpo de niño dolorido. Luego iré espolvoreando tierra y polvo de rosas. Y en la exaltada y leve polverada de luna, los despojos livianos irán quedando presos. Me alejaré cantando mis venganzas hermosas, porque a ese hondo recóndito la mano de ninguna bajará a disputarme tu puñado.
Este largo cansancio se hará mayor día, y el alma dirá al cuerpo que no quiere seguir arrastrando su masa por la rosada vía, por donde van los hombres contentos de vivir. Sentirás que a tu lado, calambriosamente, que otra dormida llega a la quieta ciudad. Esperaré que me hayan abierto tu mente, y después hablaremos por una eternidad. Solo entonces sabrás el por qué no madura para las ondas huesas tu carne todavía. Tuviste que bajar sin fatiga a dormir. Se hará luz en la zona de los sinos oscura. Sabrás que en nuestra alianza, signo de astros adivinos, brotó el pacto enorme que tendrás que cumplir.
Malas manos tomaron tu vida desde el día en que, a una señal de astros, dejara tu plantel nevado de azucenas. En gozo florecía, malas manos entraron trágicamente en mí. Y yo dije al Señor, ¿por qué sendas mortales las llevas? Sombra amada que no saben guiar. Arráncalo, Señor, a esas manos fatales, o le hundes en el largo sueño que sabes dar. No le puedo gritar, no le puedo seguir. Su barca empuja un negro viento de tempestad. Retórnalo a mis brazos o le ciegas en flor. Se detuvo la barca rosa de su vivir. Que no sé del amor, que no tuve piedad. Tú que vas a juzgarme, lo
welcomes your body of wounded child. Then I'll sprinkle soil and rose remnants, and in the moon's azure and light dust cloud, the weightless residue will slowly get caught. I'll walk away singing my lovely vengeance, because no other woman would reach into that shroud and claim the handful of bones for which I fought.
This long weariness will grow one day, and the soul to the body will say that it cannot keep dragging its weight along the rosy way, where men go on living happy with their lot. You feel them near you, digging vigorously. Feel that the still city has taken in another dreamer. I'll wait until they've covered me completely, and then you and I will talk forever. Only then will you know why your flesh, for the bottomless grave still unripe, you had to come down, unwearied to lie. There will be light in the dark zone of destiny. You'll know that in our bond the sign of the stars recited, and broken, the mighty, past you had to die.
Harsh hands took your life from the day, foretold by the stars on which it left, its garden with the snow of lilies overlaid. Harsh hands tragically entered your breast. And I said to God, down deadly paths they're leading him, beloved shadow they cannot steer. Pull him away, God, for those fatal hands, from those fatal hands, or sink him in the deep slumber you confer. I can't call out for him, I cannot follow. His boat is carried by a black storm wind. Bring him back into my arms, or his bud cut short. The rose rowboat of his life came to a halt. Have I not known love? Have I not pitied? You who will judge me, understand, my Lord. Thank you.
Hello, hola. My name is Scarlett Baudez. My born name is Azucena. So I'm here to read you a sonnet by a famous Peruvian author. His name is Cesar Vallejo. What I have in common with him is that he was a teacher in the school that I had my first job at, and he studied at my university in my faculty. Of course, he was teaching, literature and things like that, and I was teaching German. But I was very brave. I was teaching in a all-male high school, so that was intense. Vallejo is not happy, author. He's more he goes into the dark side, kind of like Dante a little bit. He lived in exile because, of course, coming from Peru, and most Latin American countries have in common that governments are not that good, right? So he lived in exile, and I think he had deep sorrows for not living in his country and doing something about social injustice and just doing something in general. So he was far away and lonely and sad, and had a lot of time to think about death. So here he goes. Ausente. Ausente la mañana en que me vaya, más lejos de lo lejos al misterio. Como siguiendo inevitable raya, tus pies resbalarán al cementerio. Ausente la mañana en que a la playa del mar de sombra y del callado imperio, como un pájaro lúgubre me vaya, será el blanco panteón tu cautiverio. Se habrá hecho de noche en tus miradas y sufrirás, y tomarás entonces penitentes blancuras laceradas. Ausente, y en tus propios sufrimientos ha de cruzar entre un llorar de bronces una jauría de remordimientos. And here comes the English version. Absent, the morning when I go away, farther than far away to the mystery, as it following an inevitable ray, your feet will slide into the cemetery. Absent, the morning when I go away, like a lugubrious bird to the shore of the dark sea and that silent empire, the white family tomb will be your captivity. It will act as night in your glances, and you'll suffer and then you'll possess the penitent lacerated witnesses. Absent, and in your own sufferings will cross between a cry of bronzes, a dog pack of remorse. And this was a translation by Rebecca Seiferle. Thank you.
Yes, okay, good evening. I'm reading a poem by John Berryman, who was quite an important poet of the mid-20th century in America, a friend of Robert Lowell, Elizabeth Bishop, the entire crowd. In 1947, he had a passionate love affair with a married woman. He himself was married. And he wrote 117 sonnets, like crazy. She actually finished the affair because he's more interested in writing poetry than in her. And 20 years later, in 1967, with much hesitation, he published these sonnets. He has a poem at the beginning talking about why he published them. My copy is the first English edition, 1968. I bought it when I was a student, long ago, and it's been an enormous pleasure to try and read and work through them again. He's quirky, quaint, erotic, obscene sometimes, multiple changes of register, difficult, passionate, and very, very serious and very despairing. He committed suicide partially because he couldn't finish his book on Shakespeare. And I'll read it twice as Dan instructed us. Two things to note. One is there's a line in German, one in French too. Manchmal glaube ich, ich kann nicht mehr. Sometimes I believe I can no more, which is taken from T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. And in the last, in the sestet, it talks about the images of the royal tombs in the Sumerian city of Ur, in which the kings and queens, and especially this queen Shubad, were buried, surrounded by their maids who drank poison and sang her into the other world. Okay, so I'll read it twice. Once, when they found me, some refrain quoi faire, striking my hands, they say repeatedly, I muttered. Although I could hear and see, I knew no one. I am silent in my chair, and stronger and more cold is my despair at last, for I have come into a country whose vivid queen upon no melody admits me. Manchmal glaub ich kann nicht mehr. Song follows song. The chatterer to the fire would follow soon. Deep in Ur's royal pits sit still the courtly bodies, a little bow by each, attired to voluntary blitz. In Schubad's grave, the fingers of a girl were touching still when they found her, the strings of her lyre. Once when they found me, some refrain coiffeur, striking my hands, they say, repeatedly I muttered. Although I could hear and see, I knew no one. I am silent in my chair, and stronger and more cold is my despair at last, for I have come into a country whose vivid queen upon no melody admits me. Manchmal glaub ich kann nicht mehr. Song follows song. The chatterer to the fire would follow soon. Deep in Or's royal pits sit still the courtly bodies, a little bowl by each, attired to voluntary blitz. In Schubad's grave, the fingers of a girl were touching still when they found her, the strings of her lyre.
There are a lot of lights up here. Hello, my name is Ronan. I've come here to read a sonnet of my own called I've called it a sonnet from cigarette smoke, and funnily enough, in preparation for this, when talking to Dan, he asked me if I actually do smoke, and in response, I said no. But I guess this poem is more about the smell and the waft of it, and how perhaps it can be suffocating, but it in said cigarette smoke, perhaps the aspiration for that last grasp of breath is perhaps the pursuit in general. Anyways, I'll let the poem do the talking. Till left brain succumb to tissue-colored, dumb, misplaced hands, and a menthol to who? Cohesive, soft, sewn tartar throat, adieu, adieu, I owe, lingered pastiche unheard, a rest, a smoke-shrilled drape, a coughing more, spilling ash on dribbled lung dead before. I choke, preach tar sermons, beating, reeling, a slow end to infertile feeling. From dead seas, trailing best those breathy sighs, there looms clarity neath tobacco lulls. King of silk souls, reigning, embossed agape's rise. Pre-partum I'll huff, post I'll be, spring, menagerie coming, going. The cigarette fogs beget my muse, while donning rust to his worn-out ring.
My name is Ted Snyders. I'm going to read a poem by Wendy Cope, who's a British writer. like to set it up, if I might. The poem is about whether it's a notion that's been in poetry for centuries and perhaps millennia, that because you write something in a poem, the poem's going to last forever, and what you write about will be remembered forever. Horace wrote, Exegi monumentum ira perennius. I've built a monument more lasting than, I think it's bronze. Something that lasts long. Petrarca wrote in the Canzoniere poem number 327, Et se miei rime alcuna cosa ponno, consecrata fra I nobili intelletti, fia del tuo nome qui memoria eterna. And if my verse is worth anything, your name will be honored here among great minds forever. This theme goes through. Spencer says, one day I wrote her name upon the strand, and the sea washes it away. But then he says later, my verse, your virtues rare shall eternize, and in the heavens write your glorious name, where, when as death shall all the world subdue, our love shall live, and later life renew. There is a poem, which I'm not going to read, by E. E. Cummings, which I recommend you read. It's called, it starts with, if I have made my lady intricate, no, I forget the second line, in which he says basically that the woman is so wonderful and beautiful that his verse is not up to the task of representing her, which is another take on the same theme. Wendy Cope's take on this theme is a little different again. Oh, I should have mentioned the last one that I wanted to quote is Shakespeare. Shakespeare's Sonnet 55, which says, not marble nor the gilded monuments of princes shall outlive this powerful rhyme. He's quite sure that that he's going to outlast everything. So Wendy Cope says, not only marble, but the plastic toys from cornflake packets will outlive this rhyme. I can't immortalize you, love. Our joys will lie unnoticed in the vault of time. When Mrs. Thatcher has been cast in bronze and her administration is a page in some O-level textbook when the dawns have analyzed the story of our age, when travel firms sell tours of outer space and airplanes take off without a sound, and Tulse Hill has become a trendy place and Upper Norwood's on the underground, your beauty and my name will be forgotten. My love is true, but all my verse is rotten.
Since I'm last, I would like to, before I read this last poem, make sure that everyone properly thanks Dan Russek for putting together this incredible evening. The poem that I'm going to read, my version of setting this up, but I feel like Ted just did in a way. Emile earlier said that the poem that he was reading was, a poet who was interested in the idea that, somehow it was writing a sonnet about sonnets. And I very cheekily said, all sonnets are about sonnets. And that is true. Like, past a certain point, sonnets are about sonnets. And one of the things that's been really lovely about hearing so many of these is that I feel like we've seen people who are stretching the form. As I like to say to students, sonnets have 14 lines except when they don't, and they rhyme except when they don't, and English sonnets are an iambic pentameter except when they're not, and they follow a particular rhyme scheme except when they don't. And so ending with Billy Collins. Billy Collins is an American poet. He was born in 1941. He's still alive. He was Poet Laureate of the United States from 2001 to 2003. For what it's worth, he has a little bit of Canadian credentials. His mom was Canadian, and he spent summers in Canada and wrote some really wonderful, wonderful poems about those summers that he spent in Canada as a child. But one of my all-time favorite poems by Billy Collins, who is wonderful because he's so technically good and he's funny and he's warm and he's witty and he wants people to love poetry so much. And he wrote this wonderful sonnet titled Sonnet by Billy Collins. All we need is 14 lines. Well, 13 now. And after this one, just a dozen to launch a little ship on love's storm-tossed seas. Then only 10 more left like rows of beans. How easily it goes unless you get Elizabethan and insist the iambic bongos must be played and rhymes positioned at the ends of lines, one for every station of the cross. But hang on here while we make the turn into the final 6 where all will be resolved, where longing and heartache will find an end, where Laura will tell Petrarch to put down his pen, take off those crazy medieval tights, blow out the lights, and come at last to bed.
Okay, thank you everybody. I think that does it for tonight. Thank you, Erin, for reminding people who organized this, but I really don't deserve any applause. First, I kind of hate it. I come from a tradition where applause is not welcome. I want to thank you all for this pleasurable night. There was some intense poetry here. I hope you can sleep tonight. And again, I want to thank our readers. Let me begin by the youngers, by the students who not only read beautifully, but one of them writes sonnets. So that's a great thing, and I hope you keep doing that. One day you will be able to organize a night of sonnets, as time passes by. Also, my colleagues at UVic and community members, Scarlett. And finally, the retired emeritus professors, one Lloyd Howard from UVic and Francis Landy from the University of Alberta. Anyway, I think that does it for tonight. Thanks again for your presence, and hopefully there will be a second night of sonnets. There are many more nights to come and sonnets to read. Thank you, everybody.